feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Walker Renfro. Got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and very proudly presented by Motley Rice, driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Motley Rice, motleyrice.com. You can find us on the JB and Goldwater app and also at jbandgoldwatershow.com, and follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB. And at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. That is also our text line. You can find us there. You can also find us on pretty much any platform available if you'd like to be like Paul or the Mac and Dino podcast, Craig, and many of you who will, I'm sure, be commenting throughout the show on all those platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. Darren will make you a part of our program. Those are your Share Healthcare text and chat lines, and we certainly appreciate Share Healthcare and certainly appreciate all of you. First full weekend of college football is in the books. A lot of reaction today, Darren. A lot of storylines from the weekend. We got Mike Morgan ahead at 12:30. We've got Keith Allsep at about 1:20 this afternoon. Shane Beamer will be on the podium at 1:15 in his weekly press conference, and we will react to much of the conversation that he will be having with our media brethren coming up in about an hour and 10 minutes or so. Carolina's going to head to East Carolina this week up in Greenville, North Carolina. Clemson, of course, is 0-1. We're going to lead off with them here in just a few moments. We got some Brave stuff to get to. We got some golf stuff to get to. The NFL is set to crank up this week. So it's a great time to be in the world of sports, Darren, and you and I certainly are right in the middle of that every week. Good afternoon, my friend, from a long 3-day Labor Day weekend. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day yesterday.
There's a ton of stuff from the weekend where I could go with like a best thing I saw. Obviously, I have a lot of good things and good thoughts about the weekend, but I'm going to just tell you, I went to Dog and Duck on Sunday, the one in Bell Hall. Mm-hmm. So it was after all the college games on Saturday, and the first thing that was said to me was one of the waitresses, Bree, walks up and goes, "You know what? There was a family from the upstate here. They just happened to be in town. They came in to watch the Carolina game because they heard Dog and Duck on the JB and Goldwater Show. So props to you, whoever you are, and more of you, head to Dog and Duck because they have good food and good drinks. And yes, even though the game was streaming, it was on their TVs."
See, I mean, we're good for everybody from wherever. That's what makes us statewide. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, whoever that is, if you can, give us a shout and let us know. That is awesome. In addition to that, of course, your Penn State Nittany Lions won this weekend, Darren. So congratulations there. By the way, an update on our picks. No surprise here, but I am in the lead at 14-5. Darren is 13-6. JC is 5-3, and Michael Flint is 3-2. They'll be picking less games than Darren and I will be picking. But I am one ahead of Darren. He got the UCLA game right. I got it wrong. I got the Georgia game right. He got it wrong. He got the Penn State game right. I got that wrong, and then he got the Boise State and ECU games incorrect last week, and I got those two right. So that's where the difference is there. So we'll get to the Gamecocks in just a minute. I've obviously have a lot of thoughts on that game. Was in Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday evening. Have rewatched the game as well. And we're going to get to all that. But let's lead off with Georgia and Clemson because obviously that was the biggest game in the country on Saturday, and it was a defensive matchup for the ages. We'll remember it forever because of that. Not a lot of yards. Somebody had to lose, and it was Clemson, a pick six, obviously the difference in the game for Georgia. So they both – I think that there's been a lot of overreaction to this ball game, and I think people need to probably calm down. How good is Georgia and Clemson? I think they're pretty similar. I think they're both teams that are absolutely playoff teams. Clemson, I couldn't watch as much because I was in the ballpark. So after Carolina got done, I went and sat up in the suite area and watched a bunch of it, then watched the rest of it outside. Watched everything that I missed yesterday to make sure that I would have a clue of what I was talking about. I didn't think that I thought Tony Elliott had an off night from a play calling standpoint. Probably needed to run it a little bit more, get a little bit more creative there, and get Ucla out of the pocket. I mean, he was just getting beat up.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. Georgia, Clemson defensively, two of the top three defenses probably in the country, in addition to Alabama at this point. Where they all lie at the end of the year, we'll see. But they're really good. Clemson certainly does have some issues, and their issues are glaring from the standpoint that, as you said before, Darren, and I think it's very appropriate that we don't judge everybody in the same groups here, in the same categories. Clemson has, over the last 6 years or so, worked their way into the elite of the elite in this sport. And so now you're going to be judged on that. And so when we say things like, well, you're not very good up front, that doesn't mean that they're not better than NC State or Miami and North Carolina. They probably are. But it might mean that they're not as good as Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, or Oklahoma in that category. And that's the category they're being judged by now. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about them in comparison to their, quote, peers at that level of college football. And they've got a little bit of a ways to go. Their defense is there, and they're going to win maybe all of their games that are left on their schedule because of that defense. But offensively, they got to get some things figured out.
There was comments after the game. There were comments after the game. Georgia's defense dominated without doing too much. Kirby Smart even said there were times where they were winning one-on-one matchups on the line, 1v1, when they didn't even have numbers to match up, but their guys were beating Clemson up on the line. That allowed them to drop more guys back. It made it even harder for Ucla to find guys. There were spaces for him to run. He's got to run. He didn't force Georgia to change anything because I don't know why. Maybe he's not as comfortable. Maybe that was part of the game plan. There were opportunities to run and take chunks of yards, and he didn't take them. That was the first impression. The second impression was, looking back at the stats afterward, the feeling of the game was, man, like they can't move the ball. You know they're struggling, to put it mildly, to run it. 9 carries for the running backs. 9. So to me, that says Clemson went into the game believing that they weren't going to be able to run the football. If you carry the ball 9 times in a game that's a one-score game the entire time, then that tells me you don't think you can run the football. And that game plan never changed. I agree with you. I don't think Tony Elliott had his best night. I think the offensive line clearly has issues. They need to be able to run the football. And like you said, we're grading them against the elites here. We're not grading them against South Carolina. We're not grading them against, I don't know, the 20th ranked team in the country, because they've put themselves in the category to be graded this way. And now, by looking like this, it goes back to what I said last week a couple times. If Clemson loses and doesn't look good losing, they have an entire season where they can't shake that label. There's nothing on their schedule to shake that label. Not right now. And it's an uphill climb for Clemson right now. They're not out of it by any stretch.
No.
Uphill climb.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, if you ask me now, okay, how would they fare against, we just saw them against Georgia. First game of the year. And let's all remember that too. It's the first game of the year. But Georgia, Bama, again, the elite of the elite, Ohio State, Oklahoma. I wouldn't pick them to win against any of them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, now it doesn't mean that they're not capable. They're absolutely capable. They've recruited as much talent as just about anybody out there, maybe except Alabama. And they're absolutely capable of winning any of these games. But if they had to play them, would I pick them? No, I wouldn't. I do think they've got a ways to go. I think that, you know, on at least on the offensive side of the football up front, Yeah, there's some question marks. And I know that they're missing some guys here and there, and they've had some issues and stuff like that. But there are some question marks. So, Ucla, it's hard to not like this kid. He's a physical specimen. He's got a great head on his shoulders. Make all the throws. He's got all of it. I'm sure, regardless of what they said, I know that Dabo said, I think it was yesterday, he didn't mind some of the decisions to kind of pull it back and keep it by DJ. I bet you they're going to get some of that cleaned up. I bet you that behind closed doors, they probably did mind some of that. I don't know that he should have kept it 14 times, and that talented group of tailbacks only had it 7. So, and guys, let's all be honest here. Let's go back to the end of last year. They weren't running it that well with Travis Etienne either.
All year. That was the common discussion. Like, all right, can you go to Notre Dame and win without Trevor Lawrence because you can't run the ball? That was the conversation all year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got to get it cleaned up. I mean, again, it's somebody's going to see my hat and think that I'm just out to get them. I'm not. I'm literally. I tried to tee this up the best we could here, Darren. Is they are being judged against the best of the best because they have proven over the years now that they are the best of the best. Their fan base likes to believe they're the best. Well, if you're the best, you can't have these problems. So it is week 1. They have plenty of opportunity to kind of get it headed in the right direction. They're going to beat SC State this weekend. They're going to beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech got beat by Northern Illinois this weekend by a point. It was a bet. Let's set aside Virginia Tech because I don't know that Virginia Tech is, quote, back or that they're going to win 9 games or 10 games. I think that they had a great night. They looked better than I thought they would. So they are the winner of the weekend in the Atlantic Coast Conference. But everybody else is the loser of the weekend. I mean, it was a bad Duke, North Carolina, Clemson, Georgia Tech. Yeah, it wasn't good. Miami is not. Miami is a good program. They are not close to the elite, boys and girls, and Bama made sure they figured that out real quick. They're just not.
I think the question I have with Miami is I want to wait to judge Miami because it appears to me that Alabama is what we thought Alabama was, right? So I want to wait to judge Miami, but the reason there's so many people jumping on the no team's ever made the playoffs after an opening week loss, so can Clemson make the playoff? The reason that train is rolling so hard is because the ACC had such a bad weekend. Yeah. And it's how can you, after this bad weekend, after one game, one weekend, how can you earn your way back in? There's an entire season of football left. If you tell me now Clemson runs the table, blows people out along the way, because that's going to happen, wins the ACC championship, they're an 11-1, or I guess 12-1 at that point. If I'm going to sit here today, I'll tell you they're probably going to make the playoffs. But let's see how everything shakes out. This was not a good weekend for the ACC.
No, it wasn't. And I don't even know that with that loss from Clemson that they fall out of the top 5, to be honest with you. I mean, them and Georgia might flip-flop. Georgia might jump to 3. Clemson might drop to 5. I mean, I'm not sure that Texas A&M, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and North Carolina, who rounded out the top 10 behind them, any of them are worthy of hopping Clemson at this point. With the exception of North Carolina, all those other teams got wins, and I get that, but I don't know that here we are in week 2, the second AP rank is coming out. I don't know that if you had a top 5 today that Clemson shouldn't be in there. I do believe that they are a top 5 team, but one more loss, it's over. Yeah, that the playoff it's going to be a pipe dream if they get another loss on this schedule. I don't care where it comes.
Yeah. I don't think there's really any question about that. If it doesn't, well, even if it comes in the ACC championship game, another loss is going to be crippling. I'll say that you said last week, if Georgia beats Clemson, you could see Georgia jumping up to number 2. You said that a couple of times. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of individual writer polls that are out and speculation about how the poll will look when it's released later today. A lot of that had Georgia at 2. So you could be on to something with what you said last week.
Yeah, well, and I base that off primarily of Georgia, thinking that this would not be a 10-3 game. I actually thought there'd be more points, and I thought, giving Clemson credit. That was more based off of Georgia and Clemson, giving Clemson a lot of credit. And if Georgia looked pretty good, and because I thought they'd have to look really good to get a win against the Tigers, defensively they looked as good as anybody in the country. They looked unbelievable, as a matter of fact. But what I actually did not anticipate was the struggle that Oklahoma had with Tulane, a 40-35 victory over the Green Wave in Norman. The game was moved to Norman, of course. So, I think that they might be too, and maybe Oklahoma slides to 3, and Ohio State stays at 4, or maybe Oklahoma slides to 4 and Ohio State moves to 3, and Clemson drops to 5, something like that. Do these rankings matter in week 2? Not necessarily, but it was that was a look. There's a lot of people that didn't like the game because it was all defense. I like that. I like that. I like defensive struggles in college football, especially from 2 of the big dogs. And there were no offensive touchdowns. I mean, there was a pick 6. That's it. Nobody scored a touchdown. So Georgia won the game. People are questioning the dogs a little bit less, but I don't know that they don't have some question marks as well. They do. They absolutely do. Kirby Smart has already mentioned they've got some COVID issues. Of course, the same thing with them. Where are the hiccups, if there are any, left on the schedule? You look at Florida on Halloween weekend down in Jacksonville and say, well, all right, that's probably the one shot they have. If not Auburn, maybe prior to on October the 9th, that game is over on the Plains. Bama, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, Charleston Southern, and Georgia Tech. I don't know if any of them are worthy of scoring a point right now in Georgia. So we'll see. We'll see. And something strange could step up and happen. But they're very similar to Clemson. I do think that they have the edge from a strength of schedule standpoint. I don't think it's overwhelming. And I do think that South Carolina, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, and these guys, there's a lot of middle-class teams there, which we're going to get to this in a little while. We're going to find a lot about this coming weekend. So could there be a bump in the road for the dogs? There certainly could be. Are they better than everybody that's left on their schedule? Yeah, they are. So
I'll say this about that. Florida fans are feeling real good right now because of their backup quarterback, Richardson. Yeah. They're feeling real good. I mean, the dude, he's DJ Uiagalelei's size. He's got speed. I mean, he's one of the fastest guys on the team. He's got a cannon, even though he didn't throw it much. So he's not the starter yet, but Florida fans are feeling very, very good about that.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah, they should be. Dan Mullen he's exceptional. Sliding the dial over to South Carolina here, 12:17 on this Tuesday afternoon. If you'd like to be a part of our conversation, hit us up on the Share Healthcare text and chat lines. Don't get stuck with big medical bills. Make sure that Share Healthcare is a part of your family plan. Things that you don't expect, they come up a lot, obviously. So if you head to sharehealthcare.com, you can learn about more affordable options, user-friendly, biblically sound. Share Healthcare, sharehealthcare.com. Gamecocks win 46-0. I know it's Tuesday. A lot of reactions already poured into this over the last couple of days. Here's mine. It's hard to find a lot wrong when you win a game 46-0 against anybody. It's difficult. New depth chart is out. Luke Doty's now on it. It's an or with him and Zeb Nolan. No, Shane Beamer's not going to give us a starting quarterback today at 1:15. He's already made that clear in the teleconference on Sunday night. I actually popped into that for a second, Darren, and he made sure everybody understood. Boys and girls, don't ask me on Tuesday because I'm not going to tell you. But what did that mean? So here's how I kind of judge the game for Carolina. Did we see enough in that game that gives us reason to believe that they can win the games that they need to win to get to a bowl game? All right. So if you just look at the scoreboard, you say, wow, all the fancy, Twitter headlines. Well, they're 1-0. They shut out an opponent. We won and Clemson didn't, all this junk. What I was looking at were the things that they need to be good at to beat East Carolina on the road, which are a 2-point underdog right now, to beat Kentucky, to beat Missouri, to beat Auburn, to beat Tennessee, those things. What we heard was the strength of the team is in the trenches, and I actually still believe that. I thought that the run game from especially in the first half, Saturday night, there was a little bit to be desired on that end for me. I didn't think that they were clean and crisp. I thought the offensive line at times underperformed. Both tackles in the first half weren't really good. They were average. Dylan Wonnum got whipped on one or two plays, and Turntine had a penalty or two, and he got beat once or twice as well. But I went back and rewatched the game to make sure that I knew what I was looking at. And when I found, this is before Shane Beamer spoke on, I think it was Sunday night, what I found was that there were a lot of misses in on the outside, tight ends, wide receivers not doing their jobs from a blocking standpoint, schematically speaking here. And a couple of times I saw this in the ballpark. Running backs, Condre White, Marshawn Lloyd missed a couple of holes, tried to stretch some things out instead of trying to get upfield. These little things, these little knickknacks that if you're really paying attention, that's what we're looking for. I had a whole host of bullet points of what I want to see Saturday night. And so that, but here's the thing with that stuff, that you can clean those things up. It's game one. And they did in the second half. They went from averaging like 4.9 yards per carry in the first half to like 6.8 in the second half. So they cleaned a lot of it up. And as week 1 to week 2 goes, my anticipation is that they'll clean more of it up. Zeb Nolan was, he was pretty good. He did what I thought he'd do. Nothing stupid. And defensively up front, that's their strength. They're really good there. They're really good, and they're going to be in a lot of games because of that. So, I thought overall for Carolina, it was probably an A type win. Keeping in mind it was a Eastern Illinois team that wasn't very good, and then also keeping this in mind, I'm going to pass the baton back to you here. That South Carolina ran like 15 maybe different personnel groupings out there. I'm talking about everything from Jaheim Bell in the up back position to the tight end position to the slot position. Same thing was Condre White, moving guys all over the place, playing 3 different quarterbacks. They threw a lot out there. They didn't show the whole playbook, didn't even show half of it, but they showed a lot of different formations. And as they start to hone in on what works and what doesn't work with different personnel groups and things like that, I think that probably should give Gamecock fans who are interested in this offense a little bit of a spark, because I do think that there's something there, and we'll see how they're performing against better football teams.
I think you laid it out well. I think they would have liked to run the ball better. I don't know, in the absence of Harris, how that impacted the play calls. You pointed out a couple of missed blocks, missed assignments, missed reads from a couple of the different backs. I don't know how that would have been different with Kevin Harris in there. I would believe, I don't know this, I would believe just simply based on his experience that Harris is probably the best in the protection game of the backs that are available to South Carolina. Probably. I think this game, it was important to keep the enthusiasm revved up, because it's hit this point of Carolina fandom where it hasn't been in a long time, right? So everyone is through the roof excited. And the last thing you wanted to do was come out flat against Eastern Illinois or Indiana, whoever you just played. And ask Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt lost to ETSU. It's a pretty darn bad way to open a new coach era. It can happen, right? It didn't happen. Instead, you came out and you spanked them. So that's the good. I thought Nolan acquitted himself fine. He did what was asked of him to do. He threw for 4 touchdowns. He misfired on 8 balls. He did fine. The defense moved around. I thought the atmosphere there was electric. That's what it looked like. You can speak to it much more than I can. So I think the things you wanted to see from this game, you saw. Now you get to this game. And this is the one where I've been pointing towards from the beginning. Let's see what happens in week 2. I thought if ECU beat App State, that the line would be South Carolina 5, 6, somewhere like that. ECU loses to App State. They opened as a 1-point favorite. It was bet up to 2.5 as much as I saw, and now it's back down to 2. So what are the numbers telling these computers in Vegas? What do these numbers see? What do these computers see that says, listen, this is, granted it's at ECU, but you shouldn't be a road dog as an SEC team at ECU. You shouldn't be, but you are. So this is another opportunity to change the narrative here. If you go out and look very good again, it doesn't say anything about your chances in the SEC, but you go out and look very good again, and there will at least be some more believers in the corner of Shane Beamer, of the team. Okay, this is going in the right direction. You've handled part 1. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. Now keep it rolling. That's the key.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that line myself. I mean, look, part of it, obviously, you're getting 3 for home field, so so that's part of it. And then and there might be something there too with the quarterback situation. I mean, look, if you ask me today, does Luke Doty play this week? I think he does. If you ask me, does Luke Doty start this week? I'm starting to lean that side. I think he probably will. What does that mean? I don't know. We'll have to see. He ain't played yet.
I think it's the running game, right?
Oh, I do too. Yeah,
right. That's
absolutely.
a big part of it.
Well, and I think too, with Zeb Nolan, from an ability standpoint, it's clearly in favor of Luke Doty. And obviously, he understands the offense much more than those other guys, or he wouldn't have been QB1. That's why Zeb Nolan got the start, because he gets it. He wasn't going to do anything dumb. You might see both of them. I have no idea. So, yeah, I was a little surprised, certainly, by that line. Does it scare me as a fan? A little bit. Generally we say things like, yeah, Vegas knows something we don't know. What is it here? I thought Carolina would probably be 4 or 5 point favorites in the game, and they're underdogs. So we'll see how much that moves moving forward. I watched TCU play the other night, and I didn't think they were very good on both lines of scrimmage. I think they have some guys who are capable. The Ehlers kid, the quarterback, certainly is, and they got some other talent out there. But I didn't see anything that said that they're that good. And obviously, this is either somebody thinks ECU is better, or somebody thinks ECU is a bad matchup for South Carolina. And that very well, the second part there might be the case. So it'll be up to South Carolina to make sure that doesn't happen, Darren. But, I would still hold firm that who's the more talented team? Oh, it's the Gamecocks. They're the more talented team. Doesn't mean they're going to win at all. I'm not saying that. But that was certainly I was a little surprised by that. We're going to obviously talk more about this with Keith Allsep and with Mike Morgan coming up here in a minute. But it's going to be a challenge. If they can get it, if they get that win, Carolina on the road this weekend at Dowdy-Ficklin, and you get to 2-0, now you're starting to count. You saw what happened to Vanderbilt against ETSU. Mike Morgan's coming up in 3 minutes. He called that game. He's probably going to be able to tell us how bad they are. And I mentioned how bad of a weekend it was for the ACC. It was a pretty darn good weekend for the SEC, with the exception of 2 black eyes. And one of them is LSU, and this one was a pair of black eyes for Vanderbilt. They were hot garbage. And LSU, they got problems. Credit to UCLA, no doubt, but LSU has problems. We're going to talk more about that, certainly. Plenty of football to get to. Shane Beamer, again, going to meet with the media in about 45 minutes, so we'll make sure that we fuss and discuss some of what he is discussing on the podium in Columbia. Keith Allsep will be here for that conversation at about 1:20 this afternoon. But coming up next, Mike Morgan with ESPN and the SEC Network right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need the perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan, subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work. And 2 others you probably don't think much about: stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor, Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Motley Rice LLC is a law firm with international reach, but it hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for people harmed by products including asbestos and talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, and also catastrophic injuries and auto recalls, including dangerous Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. Visit motleyrice.com. Thank you, Motley Rice, for supporting the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
Okay, what's going on today, huh? Anything to talk about?
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon. Greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon. Greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, 12:31 on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice, a law firm with international roots.
Reach, all of it.
International reach, but hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights hard every day for people harmed by products like asbestos, talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, catastrophic injury, auto recalls like the Takata airbags. It's been a big debacle for quite some time. MotleyRice.com. If you've been affected by any of these products, MotleyRice.com. Obviously, Gamecock fans know that name quite well. Joe Rice has long been a part of Gamecock athletics in the University of South Carolina. Keith Allsep is ahead about 1:20 this afternoon. He's going to pop in as Shane Beamer addresses the media in Columbia. So we'll fuss and discuss a lot of what he has to say there. Mike Morgan should be popping in here any moment now. And Darren can let us know when he's ready to go. Other scores from the weekend, obviously starting Friday night. Everybody saw Virginia Tech, what they did in North Carolina. These are top 25 scores of interest, if you would like to say it that way. Bama steamrolled Miami 44-13. Oklahoma, of course, survived Tulane 40-35. Rattler, a Heisman candidate, maybe the top one, 30 of 39 for 304. Bryce Young, by the way, probably threw his name firmly on the board. 27 of 38 this weekend for 344 and 4 touchdowns against Manny Diaz and the Hurricanes defense. We all know what happened in Clemson, and Georgia A&M took care of business against Kent State and the Golden Flashes this weekend, 41-10 there. Iowa State just 16-10 over Northern Iowa. A little bit of a struggle for Matt Campbell and the Cyclones. Cincinnati, big over Miami of Ohio. Oregon over Fresno State. There are the Nittany Lions and Darren Goldwater. I know he was fired up. Nobody scored in the first half of that game, but Penn State scored enough to win it in the second half, 16-10 on the road at Wisconsin. That is a huge win for Penn State. We'll see where they're ranked when the new top 25 is issued in about an hour and a half. Southern Cal wins big. Iowa, they've got game day coming to town this week against Iowa State. They rolled Indiana 34-6. And then the upsets there, UCLA over LSU, Washington falls to Montana. Go Grizz. Texas by 20 over Louisiana. And Notre Dame beats Florida State in a dandy. I thought that game would be close. It was down in Tallahassee. Unfortunately for Mike, he didn't get to call a win in the SEC Saturday night. Vanderbilt was pretty putrid against East Tennessee State in front of what I understand was about 17,000 fans at Vanderbilt Stadium. But certainly congratulations to East Tennessee State in that victory over an SEC program. Hey, Mike.
Guys, hello. For an Andrew Franklin, who's the coach of ETSU?
Clark Lee.
without looking it up for
Oh,
ETSU.
Yeah,
Oh, for ETSU.
not on both sidelines. I should know this because I'm still at least sort of following the SoCon, but I'm not following it close enough. They play on Steve Spurrier Field, I think.
Right, that's where Steve is from, Science Hill High School in Johnson City. You are correct on that. The coach, I'll give you a clue, recruited Peyton Manning to Tennessee, won a national title there, won a national title at Florida State, coached under Rich Brooks at Kentucky. Anybody? Bueller?
Someone just texted you and maybe has the answer. I don't know.
I don't know if that was, the beautiful thing about being on a Zoom with you guys is you can't cheat. I'm looking at you. And you want so badly to go to Google, but you can't do it. I'll kill the suspense. Randy Sanders.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Randy Sanders.
Haven't
Quarterback
thought about
coach,
that name in a
offensive
while.
coordinator. Yeah. I mean, really, I didn't know he was the coach there either until I obviously spoke with him and started getting ready for the game. And I couldn't believe they were able to get him. This is a guy that's got a ridiculously good track record and could certainly be a coordinator at bare minimum at a number of Power 5 schools. But he wanted to be a head coach, and that's who rang the doorbell. He took him to the playoffs in his first year there, and I'd be surprised if they don't make it this year there at with the Buccaneers. So, yeah, I mean, I've never called another game like that. Like, I've called some lopsided matchups on paper, SEC versus whomever, that turn out to be much closer than people would have thought. This was a whole other deal. ETSU is simply a better team than Vanderbilt. It's not even. This was not turnovers. This was not. It wasn't our night. This was one team was better on both sides of the football. And that gives you an idea of what kind of task is at hand for Clark Lee, who I think is a good guy and has a chance to be a good coach. Like, I applaud the hire, but what Derek Mason left in Nashville leaves a lot to be desired.
I mean, I just pulled up their schedule, and we're not going to get too bogged down with Vandy football,
no.
Mike, but because I'm sitting here thinking, well, my gosh, if you can't beat ETSU, who can you beat? UConn?
Maybe.
I would say that's your best chance. UConn just needs to be put out of their misery. I mean, they're just ready to. UConn needs.
Well, they just did that to Randy Edsel.
Yeah, they need to either reclassify back to the Skip Holtz 1AA days or just disband the football program. They have no business being in Division I. There's no commitment there. What they've done to those kids over the last however many months has been ridiculous. COVID has been it's been difficult for everybody, but the way they've handled it has been unsightly. So, yeah, I know you don't want to get knee-deep into UConn football, but
no,
we're kind of all over the map here. That's all right. Well, you've got an intellectually solid audience that is capable of talking about more than just one or two programs.
That's true. Well, I tell you what, we'll take a Stokes Volkswagen drive around the SEC with you, and we'll go from bad Vandy to the team that you're going to be calling this week, LSU. They both had rough starts. The SEC had a good weekend with the exception of literally these two programs. And LSU goes out to UCLA and gets knocked around by the Bruins. Kirk Herbstreit, hey, he rang that bell all week. He said, be careful, boys and girls. Chip Kelly might be onto something here. They're now 2-0. The Bruins are. LSU is 0-1. And Ed Orgeron is certainly feeling some heat down there with his football program. So they got McNeese State. The interesting note here for McNeese State is their starting quarterback is Ed Orgeron's son. So that's going to be something to see on Saturday. You'll be calling the game. I don't know how much you've gone back and watched of the UCLA LSU game, but
every play.
Okay, well,
yeah.
What's going on here? What's wrong with him?
Well, first off, you give credit where it's due, and you hit on it. It's not just Kirk Herbstreit. Like, people have thought UCLA is ready for a breakthrough, and I've never been of the opinion that Chip Kelly is just not a good coach anymore. I don't think that Chip Kelly, quite frankly, got a fair shake in the NFL, and I think Chip Kelly is still a quality football coach, but you have to give him the horses to do certain things. And what stood out to me watching that game is that the line of scrimmage was won by UCLA, not by LSU, not by the powerhouse SEC program. And again, that's two things. That's vast improvement for UCLA. They have been recruiting better. And I don't know what it says about LSU. And I don't know what I'm walking into when I fly down there Thursday and meet with Coach O and his staff on Friday and just, kind of putting my finger on the temperature of that fan base. What I feel from 10,000 feet above and just hearing some of the remnants of the offseason and then the game following the game on Saturday is the tide is quickly turning in terms of support. That you have a lot of people throwing out the Gene Chizik analogy, for example, that when he had Cam Newton, they were national championship good. But outside of that, what did they really have? And they disposed of him rather quickly. And I wonder, this is a little bit different because O is one of them, right? He is Louisiana through and through. But again, that fan base, they just got a reminder of how good they can be with a magical, magical year. But Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, there's been 2 waves of coordinator changes since that national championship. There has been a lot of things that have just gone wrong on and off the field. Look, they still have talent. Butte is as good a receiver as there is in the SEC. Stingley is a top 10 pick, and some will tell you the number 1 corner in the country. They've got veteran offensive linemen, some of which are going to be drafted, and yet they did not win the point of attack on Saturday against UCLA. So I just don't know. I don't know what LSU is right now, and they've got to figure it out quick.
Well, you'd like to think they're going to win the next couple of games, but and it's Mike. This is overreaction week times 100,
Sure.
as we know in college football. It's the way it happens every year. You see your team play one game and blow the doors off. But if we want to jump into that conversation, when you go on the road and lose at UCLA, and you look at what remains with trips to Mississippi State, with trips to Kentucky, Ole Miss, Alabama. You got home contests against Auburn and Arkansas and A&M. And you'd like to think that outside of Alabama, LSU is probably more talented than all of those programs, maybe except one, maybe A&M or something. I don't know. We'll have to see. But my point is it's kind of cracked the door open a little bit now for a lot of speculation about, okay, just how many games might they win? Had they won this game, I think you look at it a little bit differently. So we'll just have to wait and see how much can they get cleaned up in the next week or two. You mentioned it, lines of scrimmage, man. Out in the West, if you're not good up front, you're not going to be good. So,
by the way, I think UCLA wins the Pac-12. I'll just go on record and say that right now.
You think they win the league, the Pac-12?
The league, yeah.
So saying that leads me right into what I was going to say to what
change things.
Jamie, so what Jamie was saying, the rest of the schedule, it's possible the rest of LSU's schedule, with a few exceptions, that UCLA is the better team than a lot of those SEC teams that are on LSU's schedule, correct?
Well, yeah. If we're looking at the bottom half of the West, are they better than Mississippi State? Yeah. Are they better than Arkansas? Yeah. Are they better than Auburn? Quite possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Are they better than Ole Miss? Ole Miss looked great last night against a woeful Louisville program. It's picked, 8th in the ACC. And as we saw with more evidence yesterday, it's not a good ACC. More evidence this weekend, I should say. It was a bad weekend for the Atlantic Coast Conference. So, look, you had the Barrett Sallees of the world, who I respect, and other people pick LSU to win the West outright this year. And on paper, you can – it sounds crazy now, but on paper, you could actually make an argument. Like, they have the guy at quarterback who's the son of an NFL guy who looked awfully good last year, who did not play poorly in that game. Max Johnson's legit.
Yeah.
They have Butte, who is, again, first-round draft pick material. They have a talented tight end. They have veterans on the offensive line. They have the top defensive back in the country. A lot of things you can make an argument that 2020 was a one-off for LSU and that they are ready to be back and better than ever, and it just didn't show up in that game when it needed to. So it's not just overreact and say LSU's terrible. It is there's something there that needs to be fixed, and they need to get right and figure it out. But I think UCLA, I would take them to win the West. DTR is a good enough quarterback, not great, but good enough. The transfer from Michigan, Charbonneau, very good running back. And as I mentioned, the lines of scrimmage are sound. They have a defense now. Chip Kelly hadn't had one to work with since he got there. They got one now. Yeah, I think UCLA is pretty legit. Kirk Herbstreit knew what he was talking about when he threw that floater out there on game day. Like, yeah, I'm just telling you can jump on the bandwagon now because he knew what he was doing. That was his way of telling you. I think they're gonna beat LSU, and even though he didn't say so, I'll bet you if you gave Kirk even money, he might take UCLA to win the Pac-12 as well.
I think he did, actually. I think
he did. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So you're our Kirk Herbstreit. This is fantastic.
He's much better looking and makes much more money.
All right, so let's talk about Georgia and Clemson. This is such an interesting game to kind of get into. No offensive touchdowns. I mean, if you ask me today, I think maybe two of the top three defenses in the country in this game, Mike. Clemson has issues. Georgia won the game, but they have issues. I don't see a loss left on Clemson's schedule. This game does not mean they're out of anything. Georgia could have a hiccup in there, but if you ask me today, outside of Florida, I'm not predicting Florida as a loss. I'm saying that's the biggest opportunity maybe they have to lose, maybe bar Auburn. Not seeing a loss on their regular season schedule. So just summarize what you saw in this game and what this means for the outcome means for both programs moving forward.
Well, you hit it. I mean, Clemson's going to be favored in every game they play the rest of the way. So when you pose the question, does this mean they're completely out of it? No. I mean, they could still go 12-1 and find themselves in a playoff. And if you get into a 14 playoff, things can happen. By then, maybe they figure out how to patch up that offensive line. By then, maybe DJ actually looks like a Heisman Trophy candidate, which he did not look like at all on Saturday. And they're not going to face another defense like that the rest of the year. They're just not. So, you don't put dirt on top of Clemson yet. And as far as Georgia, this is the game. I told you that this to me was bigger for Georgia than it was Clemson. I don't think Georgia was going to lose this game and still get to the playoff. Now, Georgia just reminded everybody why this might be their best team under Kirby and have the best chance to win a title. They looked the part. Now, Clemson's defense was stout. And one thing I've learned about Kirby, and this is a lot of defensive coordinators who turn into head coaches, Kirby always thinks more in line of, I'm going to go with the flow of the game. Whereas offensive guys are like, I got my top 50 plays and we're going to run them and we're going to score as many points as we can. Kirby always, I know they brought in a new offensive coordinator in Cohen, but if it's anything like the way it's been under Kirby since he got to Athens, it's we're going to run the philosophy that I want every Saturday on offense. And that means if I see this being a defensive struggle and the first team that flinches loses, then we're going to play it conservative and we're not going to turn it over and we're going to let them make the mistake, which they did. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're going to win the game. So I wouldn't look at that game and say, well, Georgia's offense has got issues. No, let's talk a few weeks from now, and then we'll see if Georgia's offense is not quite potent, because I think it will be.
Yeah, I agree. And, so to kind of tee this conversation up at the top of the program, Mike, Darren and I made it crystal clear, amongst all the internet chatter and all the crap that's out there, when we're discussing on the other side of this coin, Well, for both of them, but here in the state of South Carolina, when we're talking about Clemson, but it means the same thing to Georgia. When we say things like, yeah, they got issues up front, and which they do. They got to figure this out. They got to figure that out. Play calling was suspect at best for Tony Elliott. They got to get DJ Uiagalelei out of the pocket. When he's getting heat like that, they're going to have to move him around. And those type things. It's not necessarily a criticism of whether Clemson is a good or bad football team, Mike. Clemson and Georgia, alongside Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and that's probably about it, are now their conversations are had a little bit differently because their conversations are amongst the elite. And so it's not whether Clemson is good enough to beat everybody that's left on their schedule. They are. But is Clemson good enough to get into a college football playoff and beat a team like Georgia or better? And right now, I think that answer is no.
Yeah, I don't think this is Dabo's best shot, and I don't think DJ is Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think that offensive line is great. And so from that standpoint, you're right. Yeah, I don't see that. They're still going to have a great year.
No question.
A lot of games. Like if you get to the point where it's, well, are you good enough to win a title? Oh, you're not. Well, then it's not. It's an off year. Well, then that's a hell of a place to be as a program.
That's right.
But that's where I think Clemson is this year. I don't see a title coming out of this team, but they're going to win a lot of games.
Mm-hmm. All right, so is Alabama. So let's kind of wrap up with Bama and Miami. I want to get your thoughts on the Gamecocks. We'll let you move on here. But Bama did what they do. You mentioned earlier, Salih and guys like that picked LSU to maybe win the West outright based on paper. Well, in my opinion, on that same sheet of paper, the head coach at Alabama is still Nick Saban. So until he's gone, it's going to be hard for me to ever pick anybody but Bama to win the West over him. But they just put an exclamation point, the throat on the neck, whatever you want to call it, on the weekend with their 31-point victory over Miami. Some people thought Miami would keep this thing close for a while, but it wasn't really close from the start.
My favorite part of that game, and it just kind of encapsulates Miami football over the last 20 years, they're getting their ass handed to them, pardon my French. They're not even clearly not in the same competitive realm as Alabama. They get a turnover, so they got to do their little gimmicky turnover chain, and the guy puts it on, and, the U. All you needed was Luther Campbell, handing out CDs on the sideline to make it circa, 1990s Miami football. And then it turns out there's a penalty flag on the play, or it wasn't even a turnover. So Alabama got the ball back. So what do you do now? Do you put the turnover chain back in your little security box, or, can you take back the last 2 minutes? Miami is still Miami, and Alabama is still Alabama. And so not surprised at that outcome. Look, it is nice to be a contrarian and hope that you get that one-in-a-lifetime prediction where you pick Alabama to not win the West, and it turns out to be true, and you look like the smartest guy in the room. But if you picked LSU or A&M this year, I think you're going to be on the wrong side of history. I think Alabama's going to win another West and make it back to Atlanta, and they're going to be the team to beat again.
I like what Heather Dinich, I don't know what program it was. It could have been Get Up. Someone said the question was, what if I said I've got an envelope with a national championship trophy and a Heisman, and I'm going to send it to Alabama? What would you say? She said, I'd just say put a stamp on it and put it in the mail.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of the way it's been. That's kind of the way. And I don't think they're interchangeable. I don't think just anybody can play quarterback and do it well. They've had a couple of hiccups here along the way, but clearly the kid they have now is good enough, and Mac Jones was good enough, and we can go on and on. Tua and on and on and on. They keep getting in 5 stars, and then they're surrounded by 5 stars, and then you have the greatest coach of all time. It's like what was the old expression about the banks? Too big to fail. I mean, Alabama right now is too big to fail, and you just have to catch them in that one cycle where they're not clearly the best that there is. That's what LSU, that's how they got their title. Clemson got their 2 titles, Ohio State. But for the most part, they're the best, and something weird has to happen for that to change. Maybe it does. Look, they'll have A&M. That to me, that's still their best opponent before Atlanta, but again, I wouldn't bet on it.
2 weeks or in 2 Saturdays, they'll be in the swamp. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see. But
I'm not seeing that.
I'm not either, but we'll,
they got to figure out who their quarterback is. Richardson outplayed the kid from LaGrange, who's
Emory Jones.
Emory Jones, who's been used in spot duty for the last 2 years. I've just never seen it out of Emory Jones.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I've said, Darren can back me up. I've been saying this for weeks. I'm not sold on it. I don't want to hear Dan Mullen can get Emory Jones to do this, that, and the other.
No.
I want to see it first, and I'm not seeing it. So
they might be reminded just how good Kyle Trask was, because that kid was accurate as all get out and didn't miss hardly any throws. I don't care if he wasn't mobile. Neither was Mac Jones. He's now the starting quarterback in the NFL for the Patriots. Won a Heisman, won a national championship. This whole notion that you got to have a running quarterback, it's been proven wrong and wrong again. The same people that will tell you that you have to have it, they're not letting go to their narrative, no matter how false it turns out to be.
Right. I agree. Final couple of minutes here, Mike. Want to get your quick thoughts as well on South Carolina, 46-0 win, obviously, over Eastern Illinois this weekend. Great opening win for the Gamecocks. I'm not going to get all into it now, but already discussed some of this with Darren. We'll discuss more coming up an hour or two. I was looking at some finer points in this game as a little bit of a gauge as to how they would play against ECU this weekend in Greenville, the Kentuckys of the world down the road. I think there are still some questions out there to be answered, but nonetheless, a big opening weekend win for Shane Beamer in his debut.
Well, it was what the doctor ordered. I don't think, and I made this point on another show, that not all FCS programs are built alike. There's a big difference between Eastern Illinois and Montana, who went up to Washington and knocked off a top 25 Huskies team. This is what this program needed right now, especially with the quarterback situation. Just play a true cupcake. Not all FCS programs are cupcakes. Believe me, there are plenty of FCS programs that can go out and beat a Power 5 team tomorrow, and it has happened. And oh, by the way, I just happened to call one Saturday. But now, obviously, it's like gradual steps of difficulty. East Carolina, obviously, the boys in Vegas feel like ECU is the better call, and they have them as a favorite. And then eventually you got the SEC schedule, and that's going to be a more daunting task. But what did you learn about Carolina on Saturday? Not a whole heck of a lot, to be honest with you. But I think from a psychological standpoint, it was necessary. And now you see what's going to look like at quarterback, and B, how do the rest of the guys size up against a quality team from a Group 5 conference in ECU?
Yeah, ECU is certainly looking for a major upset this weekend. We'll let you run on that note, Mike. You've got the McNeese LSU game, 8 o'clock, I think, Eastern on
Saturday night under the lights. There'll be some either happy Cajuns or angry Cajuns, but we know one thing, they'll be there and they'll be loud and spirited, let's just say.
Yeah, the fan base down there will take no exception in the fact that the quarterback at McNeese State is their head coach's son. They don't care about that.
No, that doesn't help matters at all for them. No, not it. It could hurt them, actually, depending on how you look at it.
Safe travels to Baton Rouge, Mike. Thank you.
All right, guys. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
There you go. Mike Morgan, ESPN and the SEC Network over there in Atlanta, Georgia. When we return, speaking of Atlanta, we'll give you a quick update from baseball and then right back into football. Middle class test coming up this weekend in both the ACC and the SEC. We've got updates coming as well from Shane Beamer's press conference, which is scheduled to get going in about 15 minutes. Keith Allsep will join us in about 20 minutes, and we'll roll our way right into 2 o'clock right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice. Right here in our backyard is Motley Rice LLC, a law firm that hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for South Carolinians who were injured while traveling by plane or bus, harmed by medical drugs and devices, or burdened by dangerous auto recalls, including Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. We are honored to have Motley Rice as a sponsor for the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and two others you probably don't think much about: stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
JB Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. Very proudly presented by Motley Rice. Find them at motleyrice.com. JB and Darren on Twitter at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. You can find us on the Share Healthcare text, chat, phone lines, 843-321-8893, or anywhere that you're watching or listening to our program. You can send us a note there as well, and Darren will make you a part of our program. Like Craig, Tyler, Steven, Marion, all of you commenting. Send us a note, and we're going to pop you right in here. And just like we'll do Keith Allsep coming up in about 17 or 18 minutes on JB and Goldwater. Shane Beamer is going to meet with the media in about 10 or so minutes. So we'll give you some news and notes from what he has to say, recapping the week 1 victory. The coaches poll is out, Darren, at 2:00 today. The AP poll will be out as well. Bama stays at 1 with the coaches. Georgia up to number 2. Ohio State is at 3, moving up from 4. And Oklahoma, even though they won against Tulane this weekend by 5 points, 40-35, the Sooners fall to 4. A&M slips into 5, and Clemson drops from 2 to 6 in the eyes of the coaches of college football. Notre Dame stays at 7. Cincinnati is up to 8 from 10. Florida is into the top 10 at 9, and Iowa State drops 2 spots from 8 to 10 to round that out. Oregon at 11, Iowa at 12. Your Nittany Lions from 20 all the way to 13. Penn State into the top 15 in the coaches poll. Southern Cal's at 14. Texas moves up 4 spots to number 15. And right behind the Longhorns, welcome to the Coaches Poll UCLA. 2-0 now, ranked 16th in the country. Wisconsin at 17, Utah at 18, Coastal Carolina up 5 spots to 19 after a blowout win over the Citadel. Mississippi is into the top 20 at 20 from 25 last week. They've slid up 5 spots as well. Virginia Tech has cracked the top 25 at 21. North Carolina, in the eyes of the coaches, has slipped a pretty decent amount here. They fell 13 spots to number 22. Oklahoma State at 23, Miami at 24, and Arizona State at number 25. Who fell out? LSU, Indiana, Washington, and Lafayette. So the state of Louisiana had a tough weekend in football, according to the USA Today Coaches Poll. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that there's anything there that's truly surprising to me at this point in time. UCLA sure did take a big jump, but it's week 1, so we'll have to see. James Scout, what's that?
And they look good doing it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, absolutely.
So it makes sense.
No question. James Skalski, the ACC linebacker of the week. Carolina's Debo Williams, the SEC's freshman of the week. So a couple of neat little nuggets to pass along to you there. So also, Darren, sticking on the theme of college football, this is a very important week for the ACC and for the SEC as it pertains to the middle class, is what I like to call it. So in the SEC, South Carolina, which, by the way, the line I'm seeing now is down to 1 for ECU. ECU, a 1-point favorite, and I think this will probably continue to swing a little bit more in the Gamecocks' favor as the week moves along. But Carolina's got a kick against the Pirates, obviously, on ESPN2 at noon on Saturday. Pittsburgh, out of the ACC at noon on Saturday on ESPN, is at Tennessee. The Panthers are 3.5-point favorites in that ball game. You've got Texas A&M, big 17-point favorites on the road at Colorado on Fox at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. Do I think that they're going to go lose it? No, I don't. But what do they look like? Going to be a little bit different playing at Mile High Stadium out there in Denver against the Buffaloes. So is A&M a, quote, middle-class program in the SEC? Well, no. I think they're probably in the upper echelon of it, but they could be if they go out and lose this one. And then you've got Missouri and Kentucky Saturday night, an incredibly important game for Tennessee fans, for South Carolina fans to keep their eyes on there. That's on the SEC Network in Lexington. NC State makes the trek after a 45-0 walloping of South Florida at home this weekend. They're going to go to Davis-Wade Stadium and play Mississippi State. The Wolfpack are 2.5-point favorites on the road in Starkville. We just got done a little bit ago saying it was a horrible weekend for the ACC, yet Pittsburgh and NC State are middle-class programs in the ACC, and they're favorites on the road in SEC ballparks this week. So let that sink in for just a second. Texas is at Arkansas this weekend. The Longhorns are 6.5-point favorites there. Saturday night, 7 o'clock on ESPN. And by the way, Vanderbilt's got to go to Colorado State, and if you can't beat East Tennessee State, you're not going to beat Colorado State. So my point is, Darren, when you look at this, think about how important these games are for the middle of both leagues, specifically the ACC and the SEC. I know that ECU is not an ACC opponent, but if Carolina drops this game, I'm talking league wide here. I'm talking league wide. That's a bad look for the Southeastern Conference. NC State, Pittsburgh, if they get wins at Tennessee and Mississippi State, big brownie points for the Atlantic Coast Conference as it pertains to the middle class. Big fail on the side of the SEC there. Kentucky and Missouri, what do they look like in that game? Somebody's going to have a leg up, obviously, in the SEC Eastern standing. So there are a lot of things that aren't going to determine the whole year, but certainly persuade how we view things in both leagues coming up on Saturday.
The biggest takeaway from me when these lines came out was exactly what I put on this graphic, that Vegas is uncertain about the SEC. We know the top of the league is Alabama. We know that Alabama is the best team in the country, and it's pretty comfortable to say that right now. But the middle of the pack, Vegas is very uncertain about. I don't know how this stands historically speaking, but when you've got 5 teams that are underdogs against non-conference teams, one of them, toss it out. It's a ranked Texas team against Arkansas. You'd think that Arkansas would be the underdog in that game. Vanderbilt at Colorado State, ECU is a group of 5 program, Pittsburgh down at Tennessee. You've got NC State, right? You mentioned it, Mississippi State. It tells me that right now Vegas is not positive that the SEC is as deep as it's been in years past. The Vegas lines right now are leaning the other way, that the middle of the SEC pack, maybe the middle down, is weaker than it's been in some time, because this is not a typical scenario. I don't recall, and granted I haven't been following it that closely for too long, but my hunch is, and my guess, 5 non-conference underdogs from the SEC in one weekend is a very, very high number. That's my guess. So it's an important weekend for the SEC from that standpoint.
Yes, it is. I can't remember that. I'm sitting here trying to think of, more towards the end of the year, over the years, where there's rivalry weekends, whether, Louisville, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, teams like that.
Right. But that's why this is more glaring, because one of them's ECU and one of them's Colorado State and one of them's NC State and Pittsburgh. You're like, well, what? Thought we're the SEC. So
that's right.
Let's see.
Well, I agree. I look, I like to be more tempered about it than some of the social media bandits out there, but certainly like to thump personally my chest for the Southeastern Conference because of its history and its track record. But at the same time, need to be very well aware of where you stand day in and day out, week in and week out. And right now, the middle class of this league is in wait and see mode. And I would venture a guess that the top of this league, outside of Alabama, is in, I think so, but we still need to see it mode. We saw it from Georgia this weekend. They beat Clemson. Nobody has a better win than that. I mean, you beat Clemson. Cut it however you want to. A&M still gonna probably need to see it somewhere to throw them at the top. LSU's not there right now. They're gonna have to climb their way back, and Vanderbilt's putrid. So, but the SEC, like, if they want to thump their chest, Carolina can't lose in Greenville. Tennessee needs to take care of business against Pittsburgh. Mississippi State and Mike Leach, they need to put it together. They should have got beat this weekend by Skip Holtz and La Tech. I mean, that field goal kick was just a couple yards shorter. They would have gotten beat. And so they need to put it together against the Wolfpack. And so and if Arkansas can pull an upset against Texas and all goes right, then you start to look at it and go, man, this league is just really good. And then, Darren, in the ACC, teams that, by the way, don't have anything to do with the SEC this weekend, Virginia's a 10-point favorite against Illinois. Illinois had a pretty good week 0 win, and then they lose this weekend to UTSA 37-30. So I don't know what the hell is going on with Brett Bielema and the Illini, but that's a Power 5 type game in Charlottesville. So it's a test for Virginia. I'm assuming Georgia Tech's going to be fine against Kennesaw State. I'm assuming, but they just lost. And Kennesaw State's a pretty proud program. Rutgers and Syracuse. Rutgers is a 2-point favorite on the road at Syracuse. If Syracuse had any thoughts, they're 1-0. But if they had any thoughts of, getting to a bowl game and kind of being a middle-class type team for the ACC, might not want to lose to Rutgers, who, by the way, has gotten better in the Big Ten. I'll give them credit. I mean, they deserve credit. But they're favorites there. App State and Miami. Miami's only an 8-point favorite against App State. Does that say more for Miami or more for App State? I don't know. I mean, we're going to find out. And then we mentioned all those other ball games there already. So it's going to be – this is a telltale weekend, Darren, for the middle of the pack in both these leagues. Certainly somebody might come out a little bit better than the others.
It's an opportunity to make a statement. And speaking of, that's why I love what the Big Ten did this year. Just open up with a bang, right? You get, first of all, fine, Nebraska, Illinois, at least kind of whet the appetite a little bit. but ranked matchups with Iowa and Indiana, ranked matchup with Penn State and Wisconsin. Ohio State, Minnesota was interesting for a little while, gave you a taste of CJ Stroud, gave you a taste of what this Ohio State team could be. Then you got him against Oregon this coming week. So then you're going to have a really good idea of how the Big Ten stacks up. You have fewer questions about the top of the Big Ten than you do about a lot of the SEC teams, because the matchups in week one were, for the most part, a lot of them were questionable, right? You had the LSU thing, right? You had obviously that big game. Alabama proved itself. What do you know about Auburn? What do you know about Florida? Georgia proved itself. But there are more questions about other leagues because the Big Ten opened with power versus power.
Right. Absolutely. It's the overreaction week is always fun in college football, Darren, but it's a lot of what we react to this week will be on the other end of that pendulum next week.
Mm-hmm.
And so many teams, just what we saw and what we think, a lot of that is going to be changed in just a matter of days. And if you're a Gamecock fan, you hope that it's not changed. You hope that there's a result maybe a little bit similar to that one from this past weekend up in Columbia. All right, Shane Beamer has stepped up to the podium. He is speaking with the media now. So we're going to go ahead and hit a timeout. When we return, we'll welcome Keith Allsep to the broadcast, and we will fuss and discuss some of what Shane has to say. We'll obviously talk a lot about what Carolina accomplished this weekend against Eastern Illinois and what they're going to see coming up in Greenville, North Carolina on Saturday. So hang tight. The JB and Goldwater show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, will be right back. Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater show and the Big Gamecock Preview show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need the perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and unmuffled.
All right, 1:20 on a Tuesday afternoon, the JB and Goldwater show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice Causes, not just cases, motleyrice.com. All right, before we get Keith in here, Shane Beamer, tell you what, if this isn't a testament to the respect that Shane Beamer has for ECU quarterback Colton Ahlers, I don't know what is. He said when he was at Georgia, had they not signed Justin Fields, this is the guy they wanted, but they signed Justin Fields. So Colton Ahlers did not end up in Athens, Georgia. He ended up in Greenville, North Carolina, and he had a pretty big week, I think, against App State. A lot of that was kind of in mop-up duty as they were already down. But nonetheless, the challenge is on the horizon for South Carolina at noon Saturday in Greenville, North Carolina against the Pirates. But we'll mix in some of what Shane's got to say here on the podium with our conversation with Keith Allsep, the host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast at 1:20 on a Tuesday afternoon. What's up, Keith?
Hey, guys. How's it going? I hope you can hear me okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can hear you just fine. It's good. Carolina's 1-0, 46-0 victory this weekend over Eastern Illinois. I'm going to start this very simple and very basic. I'm sure you've watched the game not only once, but more than likely twice or three times, knowing you. Summarize what you saw. Give us your thoughts.
Well, I thought it was exactly what the doctor ordered for not only Shane Beamer and his staff, but for the South Carolina fan base. They needed, an easy win. I mean, you're coming off, 10 SEC games last year, 2-8, 4-8 the year before that. And, you only beat Vanderbilt, and after their opening game, I don't even know if they qualify as a legitimate football program anymore, 2 years ago. But I thought the defense was dominant. Beamer ball is legit with special teams play, 2 block punts, great execution on your kickoff teams, on your punt teams. You got a 2-point conversion. And for South Carolina, outside of, Jason Brown's fumble, they ended every possession with a kick, except the first one, which was going to be a kick. And Eastern Illinois didn't know how to line up, so they gave it to old Nick Muse, and he just ran it in there.
Sounds Steve. So let's talk about that real quick. That moment right there, Keith. And again, we'll update you on some of what Shane has to say in just a few moments from the podium in Columbia. Yeah, I was talking to somebody this morning, Keith and Darren, and kind of summarizing the game, and I said, look, that 2-point conversion, there could be more meaning behind it for South Carolina. You're coming off of a 5-year tenure under Will Muschamp, where there was kind of always a baseline that once you got to it, they let their foot off the gas, and you started counting seconds till the end of the ball game. And it almost seemed like in that moment, hey, look, any opportunity we have, if we see anything on tape that gives us a chance to score another point or two, we're going to take it. And it almost seemed like that was a message. Like we're going to go until somebody finds a way to stop us, even if it's a cheap 2-point conversion about 3 minutes into the ball game in the first game of the season. What did you think about when they executed that 2-point conversion, went up 8-0? Did you feel like that was a message towards the football program and its fan base?
I mean, I just think that's a team that prepares for every situation on special teams. I think when you emphasize special teams, and not just talk about it, but you actually emphasize it, there is that swinging gate. There is, formations to where if you have not prepared and you don't know how to cover it as an opponent, then you're going to take advantage of it. I mean, that's when preparation meets opportunity. And South Carolina was very prepared on special teams. So I thought they were very crisp on all their special teams. And if you're Shane Beamer, and we've said this before, with a team that's picked to go anywhere from 3-9 to 5-7 to 6-6. You need to try to steal a game on special teams with a play. And, I just thought that was Pete Limbo and Beamer ball at its finest.
What left more to be desired in your mind Saturday night?
Well, I would have liked to seen the offensive line be more dominant. I went back and rewatched the game, and yes, they were kind of loading the box, but it's still Eastern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And, look, I think DeCurian Joyner is a fine young man. He's persevered, but you can't drop the ball anymore, dude. You can't have easy drops against the worst opponent on your schedule. Jalen Brooks, I would have liked to seen more in the vertical passing game, but you really didn't have to. That ball, it hit him in both hands. And as a coach, when the ball hits you in both hands, you're supposed to catch it. And Jalen Brooks didn't catch a long one, and DeCurian Joyner had, in my opinion, 2 or 3 easy drops. And that just can't continue to happen. If it does, you got to go the next man up.
I totally agree. Let's start with the offensive line here because I echo your comments. I went back and watched the game as well, Keith. We'll start with both of everything you said there. We're going to work our way through that response. One, with the OL, there was, and I really appreciated what Shane said Sunday night because I think I'm glad that it makes me feel a little bit smarter. Let's put it this way. I saw a lot of what he explained. Yeah, there were some times where certain offensive linemen, and I'm actually centering this conversation more around the tackles. I thought Turntine and Wonham at times didn't play very well, especially more in the first half. But second half, they figured it out. Wide receivers, tight ends at times missed some blocks and things like that, even a couple of them with the running backs. So they got to get that stuff cleaned up. But those are things that can be cleaned up. You can win against Eastern Illinois like that. Can't beat Kentucky like that. So you got to get that type of stuff cleaned up. The Joyner situation, you're right. I'm a big fan of this kid, and this is the second staff that is obviously what he shows Monday through Friday in practice, Keith, is something special because this is the second straight staff that said he's really good out there. But there's just something that's maybe not clicking under the lights. You almost wonder how long that leash is going to be before they say, look, I'm sorry, but we got to make a move. If you could do what you do Wednesday on Saturday, you're going to start. But if you can't, then you're not going to be able to start anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Look, you can say first game jitters. It's the first game of the season. It's like Shane Beamer said, it's the only sport in the world and the only level of football in the world where you don't get scrimmages or preseason games. But, I'm not willing to, give up on him today, but Saturday in Greenville, North Carolina, if there's 2 or 3 drops, particularly that are chain movers and that are become drive killers, then I think you got to make a move. I'm sorry, but you got to win games, and you can't keep dropping the football. I thought at least Greg Atkins was like, hey, turning time. Jalen Nichols, you started all through preseason camp, but guess what? You're not performing. I'm putting in Ja'Kai Moore and Vershawn Lee. And those guys played a lot. So it'll be interesting to see on the left side of the offensive line, what that looks like on Saturday. And, hey, Jamie, Darren, if I'm a coach, and I've said this many times on my podcast, if I'm coming up with a defensive game plan against South Carolina with what I saw from Kevin Harris last year and what I know about Marshawn Lloyd and Zaquandre White, I'm going to force South Carolina to beat me throwing the football and force their receivers to have to get off press coverage. And, what Eastern Illinois did was not some anomaly or something South Carolina's never going to see again. They're going to see a lot of that. And one last comment, Jamie, before I throw it back to you is, Nick Muse really had a boneheaded penalty on that holding on the Jaheim Bell touchdown run. That would have been about 319 yards rushing and, 2 60-plus yard touchdown runs. That's not on the offensive line. I mean, you take that play, that boosts your average to well over 6 yards per carry. South Carolina still had 254 yards net rushing with a 65-yard touchdown run. What was that, it's over 300. I know that. It's hard for me to count and drive at the same time.
Well, that was part of what Shane said the other night, that just a lot of dumb penalties, and that Nick Muse one, it was very dumb. Jaheim Bell was 10 yards by him when he was holding that guy, and those are the little things. You clean those things up. Obviously, that's a play though that costs you in a game against an opponent that's better. I echo a lot of your comments here. Kevin Harris, by the way, cleared to go. Shane Beamer said today, yes, he's going to play Saturday, but that does not mean that all of a sudden Marshawn Lloyd and Zakondre White and Juju McDowell and those guys won't. He's going to get in there, and the guys who are playing the best are going to play. Luke Doty did practice today, Keith, and I'm going to kind of bring all this back home in just a second. And there is an expectation that we'll probably see Luke Doty. How much? When? Will he start? I don't know. But there's probably an expectation that we'll see him, although Shane said I'm not going to put somebody out there that can't move around a whole bunch. So what we saw this past Saturday without those two guys was a 46-0 win. We saw about 15 different personnel packages. You saw guys like Zakondre White and Jaheim Bell, Nick Muse, DeCarrion Joyner, Marshawn Lloyd, moving all over the place. I mean, they were moving guys everywhere. 2 tight sets, 3 tight sets, 2 running back sets. I mean, it was about what we were told throughout the preseason. So, and then you had Zeb Nolan, which was kind of the expectation, right? Don't do anything stupid. Just don't do anything stupid. So it'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays itself out this weekend. Doty's better with his legs. Obviously, there's going to be a respect factor there for him from that standpoint. That is not the case with Zeb Nolan. But Shane is not going to tip his hand on which one of those guys will get the start. And he certainly isn't going to tip his hand as to how much Kevin Harris and those guys will play and where they will play.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought Zeb Nolan was really good. I mean, when I go back and watch the game a second time, I'm like, man, I don't really like that first touchdown throw to Nick Muse. There were 3 guys right there. You can fit that in against Eastern Illinois, but you're probably not fitting that in against anybody in the SEC except maybe Vanderbilt. And the second touchdown pass, I think it was really intended for Nick Muse, and it probably was either going to be batted or intercepted, and Jaheim Bell saved him on that. I thought those were the only 2 plays that I didn't really like. I saw him get out of the pocket. He scrambled for a first down. He got outside the pocket and evaded the rush and made a throw. I thought he was really good in doing what he was supposed to do, which was get Carolina in and out of, into good plays, out of bad plays, and not really put the ball in jeopardy. And look, it's still first game. And you get your biggest improvement from week 1 to week 2 in college football. And I think, unless Luke Doty can run at 100% and is very confident, I'm not putting him out there because that is a big part of the offense for him. And I just think you got to be protected. I do think we will see him at some point, but in my opinion, Zeb Nolan can go to Greenville, North Carolina, and engineer a win with the offense.
I'll say this. I'm obviously not listening or watching what Shane Beamer is saying, but I'm following along. He commented on Doty just a little while ago, said he's out there, but if he can't move, you got to have the best opportunity to win because, in his words, ECU is going to be flying around on defense. So to your point, If you've got a less than 100% Luke Doty out there who can't elevate the running game with his legs because he's less than 100%, then who gives you the best opportunity to win the football game?
Well, I mean, I think it's Zeb Nolan. I mean, you could still, even if DeCurian Joyner drops a couple of passes, you can still use him in that Wildcat package. I think that kind of becomes redundant once Luke Doty comes back. But it's still a change of pace maybe for him to, get coached up on the sideline or just, sit and watch a game and be on the headsets with Marcus Satterfield. I mean, I just think unless Luke Doty's 100%, which I don't see how he could be in game shape, not to play 70 plays and to be able to get out of the pocket and run, I just think you limit. I think you want to play him, but play him in spurts because he's not going to be 100% in game shape. There's just no way that's happening.
Keith Allsep, host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast, 1:35 on this Tuesday afternoon. Shane Beamer on Jordan Birch a moment ago, quote, right where he needs to be as far as how far along he's come. I know there's a bunch of questions, Keith, being thrown out there as to whether Jordan Birch could or should play some offense based on that pick six. If somebody asked me, I'd say keep his rear end at defensive end. They got about 6 tight ends, and that's all we've heard about is tight ends. They'll be fine without Jordan Birch switching sides. All right, so based on what you saw, again, keeping in mind it was Eastern Illinois. What's the strength of this team, Keith?
I mean, I think it's the defensive front. I think the defensive front is the strength of the team. And I think Jordan Birch is the reason why, but I also think, and Darren, hey, congratulations on getting a game gifted to you from Penn State against Wisconsin.
It was taken, not gifted, but you can have that opinion if you like.
Yeah, it was pretty much gifted. I've never seen Wisconsin turn the ball over in the red zone like that in my entire life.
Yeah, that's because the defensive line you're discussing.
Congratulations on that.
That's because the defensive line in the front you're discussing is not as good as the one that forced and took that game from Wisconsin. By the way, quick note on that game. Wisconsin ran 95 plays and scored only 10 points. It's the third time in the last 20 years a team has run at least 95 plays and scored 10 or fewer points.
95 plays.
Mm-hmm. Penn State was going at a clip.
And I bet you the other two were air raid teams, and one of them was probably, I don't know, Texas Tech.
I don't have the answer. I just got that little stat nugget and liked it, but I don't know who the other two were.
95 plays.
They ran 95 plays.
Wow.
Penn State had one first down in the first half.
I think I'll take South Carolina's defensive front, their group overall, over Penn State's. And, Jamie, I think Jordan Birch would be the best tight end on the roster. I've been good friends with Eric Kimry for a number of years. This kid is 6'6", 270. He played point guard on the basketball team. He played running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And I've been told his hand-eye coordination is as good as any guy that Eric Kimry's ever coached. Jordan Birch could be an NFL tight end. There's no doubt about that. But, I know you probably don't remember this, but South Carolina signed this guy out of Athens, Georgia, after the Black Magic season, named Derek Little. He was the number 1 defensive player in the country. He was from Athens, Clark Central. I got a great story about that recruitment I'll have to tell you off the air, but he intercepted a pass similar to that, didn't have to run near as far in his first college game. And I thought, Jordan Birch, I mean, he's a big-time athlete. He could probably do whatever he wants to do.
Oh, I agree. Maybe a jumbo package or something, but the future of this program needs him at defensive end. I think we all understand that. JJ Nibari ain't gonna be there forever, and neither is Aaron Sterling. Matter of fact, it's gonna be the last year for both of them. This will be Jordan Birch's team next year, Keith. All right, so let's kind of turn the page here. You watched ECU play on Thursday night against App State, and I was very much less than impressed. I thought, speaking of lines of scrimmage, I didn't think they were very good. I thought they were pretty sad, to be honest with you. But they're 2-point now. It looks like 1-point favorites in the ball game against South Carolina. So I kind of liked that matchup looking back at it a few days ago, and the fact that the lines of scrimmage would be tilted in favor of the Gamecocks, even after some of the struggles I saw with the offensive line this weekend. I think those guys will drastically improve. But they're favorites. The Pirates are. So the early look at this matchup in your eyes says what?
Well, I mean, to me, I think unless South Carolina pulls a Wisconsin, they're going to win the game. I mean, you just can't get in the red zone multiple times and turn the ball over. I mean, we saw Clemson struggle to do that. I mean, we saw a lot of teams struggle in the red zone and, really turn the ball over a bunch. And you just can't do that. To me, South Carolina, look, I think Las Vegas does not know what to think of this team because Zeb Nolan was a graduate assistant. And, the storyline is South Carolina is so bad at they had to break out a GA and a guy that is basically Uncle Rico. Okay, that's the narrative. Zeb Nolan is not Uncle Rico. Are there still questions about this South Carolina team? Absolutely. South Carolina has to continue to play dominant on defense, dominant in special teams, and they got to be able to stretch the field because East Carolina's better than Eastern Illinois on defense, even though that's not probably saying a whole lot. But they're going to stack the box, and they're going to say, hey, that number 5 guy, he doesn't catch it very good. And neither does 3. And so they're going to make South Carolina win in the passing game. And so when you get man coverage in a stacked box, you have to be able to make your opponents pay for that. And that's the one thing that was not answered on Saturday night is, can South Carolina make plays in the vertical passing game? They only attempted one shot. It was the second play of the game. Like I said, maybe a little overthrown, but Brooks got both hands on it. I mean, he came back and made a great acrobatic catch on the sideline and got one foot in. I still don't know how the side judge missed that because that's his key, is the foot on the sideline. But he did. And so hopefully, South Carolina's wide receivers can make plays down the field and you don't have third down drops. To me, you can't have passes off the receiver's hands going back the other way or just drops on third down. You can't do it.
By the way, I want to plug this in. 2 blocks this weekend for the Gamecocks on special needs. Debo Williams had both. Shane Beamer just said, had they lined up correctly and all of their special teams units, they would have had 4 blocks based on what he saw on film. Yeah, I think that's what's a little concerning. So as it pertains to the vertical passing game here, Keith, that's what's a little concerning to me, not just in this game, but every other one moving forward is you're going to have to show that you can hit a deep one here and there, because if you can't, then we all know what everybody's going to do. It's exactly what Eastern Illinois tried to do this weekend. They're just not good enough. They're just not talented enough. But the others that follow are. I don't know how talented East Carolina will be, but I know Georgia is, and I know Kentucky is, and they're going to line it up, and they're going to run blitz, and they're going to do all those things. They're going to try to confuse you, and if you can't hit one over their head, it's going to be a long night offensively. I don't care how many players they have, Carolina, I'm talking about. On the flip side of that, Beamer says earlier in his press conference, I thought this was a really interesting note. I'm going to use this throughout the week, that when he was at Georgia working with Kirby Smart, had they not signed Justin Fields, they were trying to sign lefty Colton Ahlers, who's the starting quarterback now at East Carolina. Obviously, they signed Fields before he transferred to Ohio State. Ahlers went to Greenville. This kid, he's got it. I mean, he can throw the football. You make all the throws, Keith. We've seen this out of him. He's put up big numbers in his career. If you're asking me, I'm going to throw this over to you, but if you're asking me, I think the most important thing for Carolina on Saturday afternoon is that defensive front should bulldoze their offensive line and make him uncomfortable, because getting him moving around is going to be critical to what they try to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how mobile he is, but what you can't do is, run past the guy or leave open lanes and let him run out of the pocket, and extend drives. I was encouraged by what I saw. And again, it was against an inferior FCS opponent, but I thought Darius Rush played really well. I thought David Spalding was always in position. I thought Jalen Dickerson played very well. Foster, Cam Smith, man, I mean, I thought his enthusiasm and passion for the game on defense matched Zaquandre White's enthusiasm and passion for the game on offense. And I think that just becomes infectious. And so for me, this game it's about South Carolina. It's not about East Carolina and a guy that, woulda, coulda, shoulda been at Georgia. I mean, Shane Beamer could be taking a page out of the Lou Holtz playbook. He's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in my life. He could be the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. I mean, the guy's at East Carolina. He's at East Carolina. I mean, it's time to go on the road, and you're an SEC team. You've got SEC talent. You should be able to go into Greenville, North Carolina, and win the game.
1:46 on this Tuesday afternoon. A couple minutes left, Keith, and then we'll let you run here, brother. From a secondary standpoint, a lot of questions about those guys and the linebackers. I want to get your thoughts on the performance of both. Brad Johnson looked like a different player. I think Cam Smith's going to end up being really good, just like they said he would be before Will Muschamp signed him. Again, it was Eastern Illinois. We have to keep all this in perspective here. Totally understand. But from an ability standpoint, I actually was a little bit surprised about some of what was out there running around on the field. It looked a little different than I thought it would.
I thought those guys at linebacker, Johnson, Staley, Sherrod Green, Mo Kaba, I thought those guys played faster than linebackers played under Will Muschamp. I thought they got downhill. I mean, obviously at times, T.J. Brunson, Ernest Jones, Sky Moore, those guys could fly to the football. But I just thought South Carolina's linebackers were aggressive. They pinned their ears back. They flew to the football. And, other than Carlins Platel lining up offsides, which I still don't understand as a line official, as a head linesman, how a guy outside of JV football who never looks in at the ball, how guys line up offsides in the secondary. You're looking right at the ball. I mean, that cost South Carolina another touchdown. I mean, you do that against Kentucky or at Missouri or someplace like that, that could be a play that costs you a ball game. I mean, again, it was against Eastern Illinois, but that guy's a college graduate and a very intelligent young man. You can't have that kind of mistake. And I saw it before the play happened. I was like, well, that's coming back.
Yeah. The penalties, they got to clean the penalties up. That was not good for
8 penalties is too many, particularly against an opponent like Eastern Illinois. Again, you make your biggest improvement from week 1 to week 2, and we're really kind of nitpicking at this point. I thought overall, the opening of the Shane Beamer era was very successful. It's the first coach in school history to pitch a shutout in his first game. I mean, think about all those great Ellis Johnson and, defenses and players that Shane Beamer left for Lorenzo Ward when he went to Virginia Tech. None of those defenses shut anybody out. It was 2008 when they knocked Russell Wilson out of the game. That was the Tommy Beecher game.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody remembers. Carolina won like 34-0. Beecher threw 4 interceptions, and I don't think he ever played again. But that was the last shutout, and 109 yards total you gave up. I don't care if you're playing the, Heathwood Hall B team. 109 yards is a great effort, from Clayton White. And, you had over 400 yards offense and you scored a bunch of touchdowns. So I thought it was just what the doctor ordered. They got to build on that. They got to fine tune some things. You take your running game, you take your defense, you take your kicking game on the road. Those are 3 things South Carolina, showed to be very proficient in. That's how you win games on the road. That, and you don't turn it over like Wisconsin did, and they were at home.
Keith Allsep, the host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast, we'll let you run on that note. Real quick here, about 20 seconds. What do you have coming up this week?
Well, we'll have coming up a little later today, we'll have the best of Shane Beamer's audio and mailbag. We do a weekly mailbag with our patrons. Then tonight we'll have our Garnet and Black Town Hall. Can't wait for that. It's a live Zoom call that lasts 60 to 90 minutes. We've had a lot of new VIP subscribers, so we could have 100. Well, I can't have more than 150, but usually we don't have that many live, but we have a ton of VIP members that love to listen to the replay of that. The only thing is they don't get overtime, which is unrecorded, and it's just for the people that are on live. And we have some really good stuff, and we have special guests pop in every now and then. Could have Ben Bronner from thebigspur.com popping in tonight. So we got that, and a jam-packed week of guests as we get ready for the East Carolina game. And I'll be watching up in Dallas on Saturday. I'll be getting up early and after my Friday night football game and heading up to Dallas to watch the game with the Dallas-Fort Worth Gamecocks. Can't wait to see all those great folks up in Big D.
Great stuff as always, my friend. And thank you so much. Carolina 1-0, looking for 2-0 this weekend against the Pirates. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Keith.
All right. Hey, guys, have a great week.
Later. There you go. Keith Allsep, again, the host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast 152 on this Tuesday afternoon. By the way, just a little quick weather nugget here to pass along from the National Hurricane Center. Looks like there's something brewing out there in the Gulf Coast that's expected to make its way across the panhandle of Florida and skirt right up into the Atlantic and right along the Carolina coastline over the next few days. So could be getting some interesting weather around here. We'll see what that looks like. But folks who don't know about that, keep your eyes on it. Definitely. I don't think it'll be a major hurricane or anything like that. But just wanted to pass that along there. All right, 152 again on this Tuesday afternoon. So, a couple interesting things out of that. Obviously, I think everybody at the end of the day is like, good win. Got to nitpick a couple of things because we still don't know exactly who or what this team's going to be. And I think everybody also, I guess I would say it this way, Darren, if this schedule had a trip to LSU or a trip to a trip in addition to what they already have, but if it had a trip to LSU on it and a trip to Ole Miss and instead of East Carolina this weekend, a ball game against North Carolina or Miami or Texas or somebody like that. If there were 3 or 4 other games on there that were a little bit different, teams that we just know are better than the Gamecocks, I don't know that people would be laser focused on a lot of the little things maybe as much as we have been. But I think that a lot of the fan base has kind of figured out that there might be a fine line between wins and losses this year. Like there's an opportunity to win a few more games than people think you can, but you have also plenty of opportunity to lose all of those games starting this weekend against ECU. So they're looking at things a little bit differently. Like, okay, all right, if this can get cleaned up and that can get cleaned up, well, then maybe we can beat ECU, and we should beat ECU, and we can beat Missouri. So unlike other seasons where you look at a team who's coming off a two-win year and you just see a bunch of losses on the schedule, or you see a bunch of wins on the schedule, we don't really know what to expect. So we're starting to use a little bit of a different, more cautious approach and a little bit more in-depth dive into some of these matchups to kind of gauge this sucker a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's hard to stomach hearing what I'm going to say, but it's true. This is a barometer game for South Carolina. It's because you want, like Keith just said, you should be able to go on the road to Greenville and win this game. Your defensive line should be able to control this game. Like you said, Ehlers did not appear to be like the most mobile guy in the world watching parts of that ECU App State game. Get him uncomfortable. You should be able to do that. The offensive line, which is supposedly a strength, should be able to control this fast defense that's flying all over, and paraphrasing what Shane Beamer said a little bit ago. All of that should happen. But you're underdogs. And Vegas doesn't look at this with any type of emotion at all. This is strictly computers and numbers and formulas. And when you see numbers come out like this, it means they ran their model thousands of times. And this is where they're coming out when they're running their model. Sometimes they're way off, but oftentimes they're dead on. So it makes this a barometer game. It's a step up from where you just were. And you'd rather have this step up than a larger step up against a Power 5 team. So it's kind of like the natural progression. So while it's more comforting to know that you're playing ECU as opposed to, say, North Carolina, it's also the next step up. And it's going to teach us a lot. I'll end with just what you said about the fine line, because that's dead on. Any team that's marginal, you don't really know much about, it is a fine line. Because even with the best teams and the high-profile matchups and whatnot, coaches will tell you it's a handful of plays, 7-8 plays that make the difference in the game. So when you've got a team like South Carolina, it's a much finer. It is a razor-thin line. That's going to be the case, not talking betting line, like mistakes and execution line. And that's going to be the case this Saturday in Greenville. They're going to have to do the little things right. If they don't, if there are drop balls, if there are penalties, look, man, that game's for the taking for ECU, because you're not at the point of saying we can go in there sloppy and go win that game. That's going to be the common refrain the entire season for South Carolina. It is a very fine line between wins and losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And a barometer game, I think, is a perfect way to put it, and that's fine. I don't think anybody should take exception to that. If you go up there and you win by 2 touchdowns or more, guess what? Maybe and everybody thought you weren't that much better in East Carolina, or you weren't better. Maybe you are actually pretty good. If you lose, and you're definitely going to know where you stand, and if you survive, then you know what you need to do to get bowl eligible. And so yeah, it's a great barometer game. I think it's a great way to put it. And look, of all the little things, the nitpicky things we've been talking about that they didn't do right, they beat Eastern Illinois by 46 points. It was like the 3rd largest margin of victory in the country over the weekend. And I'll remind people this, the first game of the Spurrier era was a 24-15 win over Central Florida. Not the Central Florida you know today. They didn't win a game that year. They were horrible. They were so bad. And it was a 9-point victory in the first ever game of the Steve Spurrier era. So there's a lot of positive coming out of that weekend. Hopefully it continues that way. And we know that it'll continue tomorrow because JC Sherbert joins us here on our program. Braves 1.5 up on the Phillies. We'll get it more into that tomorrow. Cantlay has followed up. Dustin Johnson, of course, is the winner of the FedEx Cup. $15 million now in his pocket. That must be nice. So a pretty good sports weekend. And tomorrow, what's even better about all this, Darren, is it's Wednesday. Not Tuesday, it's Wednesday.
Yeah, it's like we're almost at game week.
We should do this every week.
Games.
Why don't we do this every week, just Tuesday through Friday?
I mean, just cut Monday out of the week. Done.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. All right, thanks to Keith and Mike Morgan and Darren and all of you. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that, bud. It is National Beer Lovers Day. Enjoy a cold brew of your choice. Yeah, exactly. See you tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice and driven by Stokes Volkswagen.